Okay, this is Jimmy Jive, and you're listening to Motor City Rock Talk. Today, my guest is a phenomenal songwriter, musician, plays bass guitar, lead guitar, plays anything pretty much. She's been around for several years in different forms and factions. I first heard of her and her band early 90s. They were called Inside Out, and I really enjoyed the band. Spectacular live band, had some great material, very exciting. All three of the ladies in this band, three-piece power trio kind of thing. A little punk, a little rock, a little bit of everything. She went on to do a lot of other things too, including playing with Thrall, and of course became what a lot of people came to know her as the Queen Bee. If you haven't guessed on who I'm talking about, I'll let you in right now. I'm talking today to Karen Neal. How you doing, Karen?
I'm great. How are you, Jimmy?
I'm doing great, especially since I get to talk to you finally and do this.
Thanks.
I've been looking forward to this for quite a while.
Yeah.
All right, let's start with a little background on you. Basically, what I want to know is where you're from originally, who some of your influences were, whether it be sitting around an old record player or radio, listening to some of your parents' favorite songs. What can you tell me about your background?
Well, it's a pretty easy story regarding my youth because I grew up in Rochester, although I spent most of 5th grade in an institution in Pontiac called Clinton Valley. That's another story. But my whole family has been pretty musical our entire lives. But when I was 5 years old, my favorite bands were the Monkees and Led Zeppelin. And the first time that I saw the Monkees program, I knew that was what I wanted to do when I got older.
Awesome.
I decided at 5 years old that I was going to grow up and be a musician and wear funny clothes.
And monkey around.
Yeah, I love the Monkees, even though they weren't, a real, they tried to be a real band, but yeah, even though they were a manufactured thing, they were a big influence on a lot of us, a lot of people in my generation. But then, I had two older brothers and an older sister, so our whole family was musical, and my mom loved Barbra Streisand, and my father, he loved Ray Stevens. We grew up listening to a lot of that stuff, but I loved like Led Zeppelin, Aerosmith, all the hard rock. I loved the band Heart, and then throughout the 80s I loved obviously the original version of Van Halen. David Lee Roth was a big influence on me. I loved Prince, and then I got to listening to this program as a teen called Dangerous Exposure. I believe it was on WABF. That was my first introduction to like the punk and the new music, new wave and stuff like that, like really strange stuff. Growing up into high school, we loved the 80s metal and all that stuff, but the first time I heard the Dead Kennedys changed my life. Jello Biafra from the Dead Kennedys basically took the place of David Lee Roth.
Okay.
And when I was in high school, I was suicidal. I wasn't planning on living past the age of 18. And the first time I ever heard the Dead Kennedys, something just came alive in me. And I started writing these crazy fan letters to Jello Biafra. And he started answering my letters. And he was such an inspiration to me, and the band's music, and that drummer, D.H. Peligro, who recently passed away. He's an amazing drummer, and just the music was so driving, and it was so angry, and it was so funny, and it was just, I loved it. And that was one of my earliest influences in high school, was the Dead Kennedy. There's a lot of history that goes with that, but yeah, he was a huge influence on my life. I believe that God used him to save my life in high school.
Now, were you influenced in any way by girl bands, so to speak? Joan Jett, the Runaways, L7, those kind of groups?
I didn't really know the Runaways that well. I loved Hit by Joan Jett, and I loved Pat Benatar. But you know what? I've never been, most of my musical heroes were men. That's what I that was my biggest inspiration with like a lot of the male artists.
Why do you think that is?
I'm not sure. I guess I like the aggression, and I followed my older brothers around,
Yeah.
I loved the hard rock and the heavy music. I don't know why it is, but yeah, a lot of I was a real tomboy. the Go-Go's, they were okay, but they weren't the Dead Kennedys.
No, not even
I love the hardcore. That stuff really spoke to me. The one part of my musical history I seemed to leave out was as a teen. After I got out of the institution, I was 12 years old, and my family had left the Catholic Church because there was nothing for us there.
Mm-hmm.
And my family had gotten saved by the charismatic movement
Right.
of the 80s. I wound up buying myself this cheap electric guitar. I actually picked up my grandpa's guitar. I thought I was going to be a drummer. I wanted to be a drummer, but I picked up my grandpa's guitar, and I started learning that. And then I wound up playing electric guitar on stage at church with the
praise band, like praise group.
The praise group, yeah. We had a full band. We had drums, and the bass player was the pastor's son, Dave Buzzio, and he was a great guy. And we would get together before church and teach each other how to play songs. He would teach me some Rush songs, and I would teach him like some Ozzy stuff. And fateful day, I had my first distortion pedal, and I brought it into church. Before service, we were jamming Crazy Train.
In a church?
I had a woman, before service.
Well, yeah, I got
but this angry woman got me kicked off the stage. And I felt really bad for my mom and dad. I felt like I'd let them down. And I kind of felt like I was just doing that for my mom and dad because, I knew God, but I wanted to do what I wanted to do. I didn't care about God's plan for my life. I followed my own plan, man. I wanted to be a rock star. I didn't go to college or anything. I went to cosmetology school just to appease my parents. Yes, you got to go to school for something. Okay, I'll go to college school. That's been my biggest influences, I guess. Lots of influences. Later in life, I loved the grunge stuff. And,
of course.
Beck was a huge influence on me, believe it or not.
Now, you started out on guitar, yet your first band that, at least I'm aware of, they may not have been the first band, but the first band that I...
Well, yeah, my first real band.
Yeah.
I had a band in high school. I played electric guitar and sang, but and Inside Out, the funny thing with Inside Out is Linda, who's 2 years younger than me. Okay. She was 16 at the time, I was 18. She put an ad in the Metro Times looking for a female vocalist and a bass player. between the ages of 16 and 20, and I just happened to be 18, and I happened to answer her ad.
Right.
She was looking to put together an all-female band. I answered that, but the funny thing is how I got to playing bass is for my graduation, I wanted a microphone, and I wanted to learn how to play bass. The pastor's son actually sold his first bass to me, to my parents for graduation. So that's how I wound up picking up the bass. I just picked it up out of curiosity. And going into Inside Out, you know, I did a lot of songwriting because I was more experienced. But Linda came with a completely different, we came from 3 different directions. You know, my big influence at the time was the Dead Kennedys.
Right.
Linda's big influence was The Cure. And the Beatles. Kathy, who is like 2.5 years older than us, she was 21. Her big influence was Jimi Hendrix. So we came from like 3 completely different directions.
That's awesome.
And somehow it worked.
Yeah. Now, how was it as far as, at that time, transferring from playing guitar to playing bass? I mean, you go from 6 strings to 4 strings, but you have to resync it.
No, it came easy for me. Like, I tried taking lessons, and it didn't, I felt like I didn't need them. Like, I learned how to do a hammer-on pull-off.
On bass. On bass.
On guitar.
Oh, on guitar.
Yeah, I could, you know. And I actually took my guitar into my public speaking class, and I put together a solo from that. It's like bits of Quiet Riot and bits of Eruption. I put together my own solo, but you know, there was obviously familiar things in it. But,
how'd that go over?
It was funny, yeah. Everyone loved it. I went from being like a 0 to like being really popular in high school. I was a reject, and I was, you know, my sister and we were bullied really badly, which is how I wound up in the institution. But yeah, I just God changed me. He transformed me from an introvert to an extrovert. That's what God gave me. That's what God blessed me with.
And so Inside Out, you guys, like I said, you guys were playing around quite a bit. You were a strong, tight band. And now, speaking of Inside Out, then getting back to it, what I was getting at was, so Inside Out, what year was that band formed?
Well, initially, we formed in 1985. Linda and I started working together. Our first drummer was Chrissy, and she was just starting out. And we had a keyboard player, Teresa. And yeah, and we were really an odd little gang.
I would say.
Close in age. But the thing is, Chrissy's father wouldn't let her play shows. She came from a really strict family. And so we had to find another drummer. And Damian Lang, he was the drummer from Elvis Hitler. And he also played in a band called Just Born. Where Tony Romeo from the Trash Brat fronted Just Born. Dave Sylvester was in the band. Gordy Rice from my high school was in the band. And one of Inside Out's first shows, we went with Just Born to Kalamazoo to open up for Sam Hain.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah, so Damien was friends with Kathy, and he basically brought her into our band. And eventually I wound up in a band with Damien and Warren DeFever from Elvis Hitler. Mm-hmm. It's a really weird little web. Inside Out was the first band that Warren DeFever ever recorded. He was only 17 years old.
How many recordings did you do albums? I don't mean like vinyl records, but did you put out
We did do vinyl records. Yeah, we did vinyl records. Right? We did, yeah, and then we, did we have more vinyl than we have CDs.
Really?
But we re-released the CDs back in 2012 when we did a reunion gig. We had an album, our first album, I should say our first little album deal came from Meantime Records, and that was because we recorded a 4-track demo. Mm-hmm. And we sent the demo to Maximum Rock and Roll, and Maximum Rock and Roll wrote us a glowing review. We wound up getting a 2-page interview, one of those issues.
Wow, that's awesome. What was the name of that album, by the way?
That demo tape was just a 2-song demo. It didn't have a title. Yeah. But our first album was put out on Meantime Records. Our first release on Meantime Records was recorded by Warren DeFever, and it was called Venereal Girl. It was a spoof of Madonna. I could sing just like Madonna. And we did this funny thrashed out spoof of Material Girl called Venereal Girl.
I do remember that. I remember hearing that.
And Warren DeFever recorded that one.
But what was the first album? What was the name of the first album?
First album was called Take You Apart, Put You Back Together.
Oh, okay. Thought I read something about that. But you did several, didn't you? Or were they compilations?
We did a lot of, we had a lot of re-releases of our stuff. We did a 4-song EP called Do It Yourself Nose Job.
Yeah, all that.
And that got our Peel session. That got us our Peel session. That was our little hardcore EP. And we had recorded with Kevin Holliver. Oh my gosh, it escapes me the name of his studio that we recorded at.
Was he local? Was he local?
Yeah, he's local.
Okay.
The thing is, Inside Out, we didn't have management. We didn't have anyone financing us. We had to we had to work and save up our money and pay for our own amplifiers, pay for our own plane tickets to go tour. Both times we toured England and Europe. But we were one of the first female bands from the United States to play the Eastern Bloc of Europe after the Berlin Wall came down.
Who were you playing with over there when you were doing those shows? Anything else from the States or bands from over there?
We played with Fugazi. Yeah, we did a couple shows with Tad. We were on tour with Bad Religion, and they were total assholes to us. So we pissed out. So Linda and I pissed all over their dressing room.
No way. Are you serious?
They were being, the singer and the bass player, not the guitar player, the drummer, but the singer and the bass player were total dicks to us. The singer was a total asshole to our manager.
So you had a manager by that time?
No, we didn't. It was just the person who booked some of the shows. She also drove our van. Crazy. We played with Snuff. We recorded a Peel session at the BBC Radio 1 at the in the same studio where Jimi Hendrix and the Beatles did their Peel session. And the BBC Radio Hall is huge.
Right.
There's a symphony hall. There's like 4 studios, and it's just amazing. Then there's a radio station, and we were supposed to go back and do a second Peel session, but our second album was a disaster because the guy at the record label, he put us in this really shitty community studio, and we recorded there. We brought the mixes back to Detroit. It was so bad, and we should have just re-recorded the whole album. And
what was that album called?
She's Lost Her Head. But yeah, man, we toured Poland, all over the UK, and all over Europe, England and Europe. I mean, our very first tour was like 6 weeks in England and Europe, and then our second tour was 3.5 months on the road.
You really tried to live the rock style lifestyle. And tell me though, you didn't have, like I said, you didn't actually have management, and you're going here, you're going there, you're playing these gigs.
We are an independent record label.
Right, I get that.
That booked the tour.
But were you making much money at these gigs, or were you sleeping in your van?
We were sleeping in our van.
Wow.
I was sleeping on top of on our first tour. We had a guitar and a bass amplifier that I could carry in each hand. Small. They were so small.
Well, hey, if it works, so what?
And when we opened for Fugazi, it's like they offered to let us play through their gear, but we were so shy. We played through our shitty little amp.
How did you go over with like their fans and their crowd over in the UK?
They were really cool. They were really cool.
Everything was good as far as that. You don't have any horror stories to tell me about this, about the UK? Anything that went down?
UK? Anything? What happened when we opened for when we opened up for Bad Religion by playing in the Netherlands? So it's just a singer. He's just like he was a dick to us. We did have quite an adventure. Chris Gerard, who used to be in Cinecide, bless his soul, he sent Linda a cassette tape with Hits of Acid taped to the outside of it. Overseas, our tour manager and label manager.
I was going to say, you didn't have an address to your bus, so had to go to somebody.
No, but yeah, and Armstrong from Meantime Records, he had booked the tours and he ran the record label, and he did his best. But yeah, there's a lot of wild stuff. It's so hard to remember everything.
Oh, I know, it was 30 years ago. I understand.
But we wound up playing in Warsaw.
Really?
Poland.
Wow.
Yeah, the funny thing is, Inside Out, we never had a place to rehearse. We were always looking for places to have band rehearsals. And we wound up rehearsing in this house that belonged to this young man named Wojciech, and his family. He lived in Detroit with his family. I think it was in Hamtramck.
That makes sense, yeah.
And they're a family of political refugees.
Oh, wow.
Polish political refugees. And when we played the Eastern Bloc of Europe, we wound up in West Berlin before we went to Poland. And we didn't know the language. And when we went to Poland, the guy whose house we rehearsed in flew to West Berlin and came with us, and he got us through Poland. And because the wall had come down, he was able to come back and visit his family and friends. Awesome. Yeah, it was so weird. Poland was so weird because we're going down a 4-lane highway, and on the right there's a horse-driven carriage, and on the far left there's a tank going down the highway. That
must have been crazy. Did you take any pictures of that or any of that stuff?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We took pictures. Played Warsaw when the Pope was in town. We played this place to 600 kids, and there were kids doing backflips off the stage. It was an all-ages show. We had kids lined up in front of the stage, guarding us from getting hit in the face with our microphones, because it was just, we do have there is a photo of all three of us singing and playing at one. Pretty cool in Warsaw. But yeah, it was wild because the Pope was in town and his helicopter was circling the city. It was weird.
Was he looking to come to the show? He just couldn't get in?
I guess not. But yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of stuff since Inside Out.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. I had one more question. Going over there, you're paying for everything. You're living gig to gig. You're sleeping in the van, that whole thing. What was the food like over there? Did they have McDonald's, or what kind of stuff were you eating?
They had a McDonald's in southern London that we would go to. The thing about the fast food restaurants is they served beer. Yeah, everywhere you went, they served beer. And when we were staying in Darlington with Ian and his family, who put us up, he took us to the public library because there was this big family recreational center with a library. In the library, there was a bar.
Right. There's a bar.
Yeah.
You gotta like that culture. Anyway, after you come back to the States, did you record some more? Did you put out another CD? What happened there?
Yeah, well, Al Sutton tried cut and paste together our shitty recording from No, not the Peel sessions. No, the shitty recordings that we tried to record an album there, and he patched it together. We should have listened to my drummer, Kathy. She wanted to just start over, and that's what we should have done, because we did record another album called 7 Years Bad Luck with Al Sutton.
These recordings you did, were you selling them at your shows? Were they in any stores? How did you work that out, or what did you do with
it? We had a few records in record time. The only distribution that we had in America, we never got to tour America. Only distribution that we had in America was through an anarchist label called Profane Existence. But we did all kinds of compilations.
Right.
We had stuff out on a bunch of different compilations.
Yeah, because the first time I saw Inside Out, like I say, Paul turned me on to the band, and he said, you got to come check them out. I saw you the very first time at a place in Dearborn called Reruns. You remember?
Oh, yeah.
You remember Reruns?
Uh-huh.
And I remember it blew me away, because you're on that stage and you filled it up like a powerhouse. You just rocked the house, and I was just blown away. I'm at the back of the bar, and I'm sitting there and after the show, you guys came over and we're talking. We were sitting in the booth talking, and I remember it was either you or Karen or whatever was asking about, well, how did we sound? How did it go? And I just I had my jaw was on the floor, because I'm going, I've seen some good bands here. Never seen any female bands play there. I saw the Vertical Pillows, but not there. But you guys just blew the doors off that place. Now, what were some of your favorite places to play in Detroit?
St. Andrews Hall was really cool. The Falcon became the Mystery Lounge.
Yeah.
That was where that's where our first shows were birthed. The Greystone was awesome. We played with Government Issue there. You know, it's so hard because it was so long ago.
I know. I was just surprised you remembered reruns, you know, to be honest with you. The HX, Hamtramck Pub.
I think we got banned from the Hamtramck Pub.
What?
I think we got banned from Lily's.
Why? Why would that have happened?
Yeah, and I think we got banned from St. Andrews Hall at one point.
What did you do?
We were crazy, man.
Were you peeing in the dressing room again or something? What was going on?
No, but when we played St. Andrews Hall, oh my God, we were just sloshed all the time. I grabbed my amp off the stage and I was rolling down. The dressing room was at the front of the club.
Right.
So I was like kind of leaning on my bass amp. I had my guitar and I was just rolling down the center aisle to get out. And someone dripped like beer or something on my head. Someone sitting in the balcony. And I was drinking the beer. So I picked up my glass bottle and I whipped it into the balcony.
I could see how you might have been barred from that bar for doing that.
Yeah, I was pretty crazy. We were with the Trash Brats and we kind of...
That sounds like a great combination, especially at that time.
Oh, it was great. And we played there with Elvis Hitler. We played there with Son of Sam.
Did you do any shows? I remember asking Paula from the Vertical Pillows this and a couple of the other female artists that I'd interviewed. Did you ever do any shows that the bands were all just female?
We did play the Rock Voice benefit. Gosh, I don't remember everyone who was on that bill. It was a really cool bill, but I don't have the flyer, so I don't even remember. It might have been at Paychecks or something, but yeah, a bunch of all-female bands. We used to play the Heidelberg in Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
We did really good in Ann Arbor.
You played Blind Pig, too?
I don't know if Inside Out ever... Yes, we did. We played the Blind Pig. As a matter of fact, I drew a cartoon of the whole band on the backstage, but after that, everything got painted over.
Yeah, you guys played everywhere then, pretty much. Metro area, Hamtramck, all that.
Yeah, we opened up for No Means No. They were amazing. Oh my God, that was at the Heidelberg. Let me see, who else did we toured with Tad.
Right.
Tad
you mentioned that.
Was the opening band for Nirvana. Mm-hmm. So we got backstage at Nirvana when they played the Blind Pig.
Oh, that must
and I was hanging out backstage, and Kurt Cobain was there, and he was by himself. I gave Warren Deceiver a copy of our album to give to Kurt Cobain, but I was too shy to say anything to him.
Did he give it to him, you know?
Oh, I'm sure he did, yeah, because they did shows with, at least one show that I know of, they did with Elvis Hitler.
I thought you were going to say something like you sent him your album with some hits of acid tape to it.
No.
That might have gotten his attention.
We used to play at this place called The Bank on Michigan and 23rd. It was owned by Lacey from Son of Sam, and we used to rehearse in that building too.
I don't remember that place.
Pretty cool. It's punk rock, man.
So you guys admittedly were pretty crazy as far as drinking and partying and all that. Did you do that before shows or just after shows? Were you able to comprehend and stay focused enough to do a show and be a little high?
Well, when we started touring, I didn't really drink much because the alcohol dried out my throat. We partied. I mean, the girls partied during the show, and some shows I did too, but usually after the show.
That would be typical because
I could drink like a pint. I would drink a pint of of Jim Beam on stage, yeah.
Damn, that's hardcore, girl. That's hard.
We were hardcore, man. We used to get in fights and stuff. Bookies.
Bookies?
That's a big one,
yeah.
We played Bookies, and this waitress from Bookies named Jamie Springer, she was this cute skinhead girl, and she became a friend of ours. She went to the Nectarine Ballroom. I think this was in 1987. Mm-hmm. We headlined Bookies, and she went to Ann Arbor, and she got the whole band, The Exploited, to come out to Bookies to see us play.
That's extremely cool.
They came to see us play. Waddy actually requested that we dedicate a song to them.
Wow.
And so we wound up partying with them after the show, and just hanging out at Bookies, just partying with The Exploited. They were all really nice. Their roadies took care of our, carried all of our gear for us. The player wanted to switch bases with me. I'm like, no way. before we left, Waddy came up to me and stuck his tongue down my throat.
Did he request permission first, or he just did it?
No.
Damn.
I had guys come up to me kissing me all the time. I don't know why that is.
Okay, we're going to sum this up a little bit with one last question about Inside Out, because we have other things to talk about. What happened to the band? How did it end? You remember?
Well, we couldn't get signed. And part of the reason why we couldn't get signed is we weren't image-based. I guess Michael Quattro, Susie Quattro's brother, he was interested in the band, like he approached Linda. And he was interested in working with us as a band, but he wanted to call the shots. He wanted to do everything on his terms. He wanted to write all the music. I was like, fuck that shit. Yeah. We were independent. We did what we wanted. We didn't know what the hell we were doing, but we did what we wanted. We just did what we did, you know. We had no guidance. Who else was interested? Oh my God, Corey Clark begged us to be his backing band.
Warrior Soul? That Corey Clark?
Yes, begged us to be his backing band. There's this band on Jello's record label called the Crucifix, and this guy asked us to be his backing band on tour, and there's just no way. I mean, they wanted us to be their backup musicians.
Well, that's no fun, unless you're backing up like Robert Plant or somebody like that. That would have been cool.
Yeah.
Or David Lee Roth, because you mentioned him earlier.
Yeah.
You had mentioned earlier that you think you had an issue appearance or something, you know. What did that mean?
We could not get signed because, for one thing, we were a bunch of tomboys, and we didn't care about looking sexy.
You weren't trying to be the Go-Go's. Like I said, L7, who was coming out, they didn't have any image.
Well, we were a musician's band.
Yeah.
And we had no guidance. We knew nothing. We only knew what we knew. We didn't know anything about being performers. Mm-hmm. I knew nothing about playing to an audience. Absolutely nothing.
You mean front of the band as far as talking to the audience? Is that what you mean?
No, not talking to the audience, but just playing, like dancing around and shit.
Oh.
We didn't do any of that stuff.
No, a lot of bands didn't. You didn't have to do that. Let the music do the talking, I always say.
It was funny, though, when we played in Germany. I don't know if it was Stuttgart or what. When we played in Germany, there was a band called Inside Out from California on Revelation Records.
I saw that, yeah.
And they were a straight edge band. And that was what's his name? That singer from Rage Against the Machine.
Morello or something?
Tom Morello?
Yeah,
is that? Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that was his band. Inside Out, made it to England and Europe before they did. And, we got that big spread in Maximum Rock and Roll. But it was funny because, we played Stuttgart and all these skinhead dudes, well, they weren't skinheads, but they were all bald, like straight edgers, they called them. And they were expecting the other Inside Out. And this van rolls up and 3 drunk girls roll out. And they wound up loving us. They were like...
So they were a trio too.
We won over the guys. Yeah, that's great.
Wow. That's really cool. Do you remember Inside Out's last gig? I know you got back together again in 2012, but...
Our last gig we did was in 2017. We played a Smitty's...
No, was this the original lineup? Was it the same group?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always been the original lineup.
Okay, yeah. Karen, what we're going to do here, I'm going to consider this part 1. Okay, we'll get back with Karen Neal in part 2 next week. So stay tuned for that. She's got a lot to say about Inside Out still, Brawl, and of course, Queen Bee. Anyway, if you're into vintage stereo equipment and you need to find a place to repair them, check out 7 Grand Audio. They're at 25642 7 Mile in North Redford. The phone number there is 313-533-3635. The owner, Dash, and Harry, been in business for 40 years. They can fix pretty much anything. Stereo receivers, amplifiers, turntables, cassette decks, EQs, anything you can think of. Like I said, they're open Mondays through Friday, 10 to 6. When you go there, tell them Jimmy sent you. Anyway, with that said, as I like to say, keep rocking.